This is your ultimate stop for everything sports. The Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Should I say more? From the NFL, MLB, the NBA to MMA, it's all in here. The Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Listen now.
Hello, and welcome back to the GSMC Sports Podcast brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I am your host, Alex Masfer. Thank you so much for tuning in to today's episode. Before I talk about anything sports related, I want to make sure I remind you guys to subscribe to the podcast. We really appreciate it, so you always get those alerts, those notifications on your phone, laptop, wherever you may be listening, and you never miss an episode. Also, make sure to leave us a 5-star review in the comments. We would really appreciate that as well, and also to follow us on all social media platforms, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. We love to interact with you guys on there. Whatever you have social media-wise, we are on those platforms as well, so make sure to give us a follow there. I hope wherever you are listening, however you may be listening, you and your family are happy, healthy, and safe during these times. And we have a fantastic show for you guys today. In a few moments, I'm going to continue my Cam Newton conversation, as that is still the dominating headline in sports. Cam Newton to the Patriots was obviously a little over 2 days ago. I'll touch on that. I will also, a little bit later on the show, talk about Baker Mayfield and why he might be in trouble this season. I'm also going to be talking about some LeBron James and the New York Knicks, as a report from The Ringer came out connecting those two back in 2010. And make sure you stick around to the end of the episode. I'm going to be giving you my top 10 NFL offensive trios. Best 3 offensive players in the entire NFL ranked by each team. Best offensive NFL trios. That's going to be at the end of the episode, so make sure you stick around for that. But like I just mentioned a few seconds ago, let's start with Cam Newton to the Patriots. We've kind of gotten everybody's reaction. A lot of jersey swaps online of Cam Newton to the Pats. Everyone's waiting on their opinion. Is this a good fit? Will it make sense? I, in my last episode, talked about why I think this could work and why this will and both won't work at the same time. I said kind of, what would happen if it did work? What would happen if it didn't work? I compared, best case scenario for New England is that this is their version of the Drew Brees to the Saints. A guy who's only in his 30s, has plenty left, is, coming off a major injury like Drew Brees was. Turns out he's completely healthy, only improves, fits the system perfectly, and the Patriots dynasty can continue. Worst case scenario for the Patriots is probably that Cam isn't healthy or Cam isn't effective at all, and it's really just a one-year thing and kind of a waste of money. I don't think either of those things are going to happen. I believe it's going to be something in the middle, and that's what I'm going to be talking about in this segment. I'm also going to be mentioning who do I think will have a better year, Cam Newton-led New England Patriots or Tom Brady-led Tampa Bay Buccaneers, as that was a big discussion point. I want to bring up a stat, though, 2 days ago on my last episode that I mentioned as well. And I want to remind everybody, because it seems that everyone has an opinion on this, that either it is going to work perfectly and the Patriots are back in the Super Bowl, or this is going to fail miserably. And I don't understand why we can't come to a middle ground on what is realistically going to happen with Cam Newton, the Patriots. Cam Newton, since his MVP season, which he was incredible in, Cam Newton, like I mentioned in my last episode, is 23-23, 65 touchdowns to 44 interceptions, only 230 pass yards a game, 60% completion percentage, and a passer rating of 82.6. Now, those numbers are just average. Those are average NFL quarterback numbers. And in my opinion, I don't know if Cam Newton can return to the form that he was in 2015, than he was before. I know Bill Belichick is fantastic as a head coach, and I know his defense is going to keep Cam Newton in games, like I mentioned in my last episode. But no, I don't think Cam Newton is necessarily a Super Bowl winning quarterback anymore unless he has supreme weapons around him. I don't think he's Super Cam what he was in 2015. And when I look at the weapons that they're offering Cam Newton, the biggest weapon that the Patriots have, besides their head coach and their coaching staff, is their defense. And while that's great, having a defense is phenomenal. And yes, I do believe defense wins championships. And I think defensive head coaches are underrated in this league and should be higher than those quarterback gurus and quarterback whisperers. You still need receivers to throw the ball to in this league. It is a very aerial league. It is an air raid league now. It's no longer this ground and pound type scheme, even though I think the Patriots will try to do more of a ground and pound type year this year. Even the Ravens, who in Lamar Jackson's rookie year were a pure ground and pound team, had to adapt this season and throw the ball around more, use more guys like Mark Andrews, Snead, things like that. Lamar Jackson threw the ball way more this year than he did his rookie year. And that wasn't just because Lamar Jackson made huge strides, which he did, but you need to throw the ball to win in this league. It's no longer ground and pound. I'm not sure Cam Newton can recreate his passing yards from that 2015 season with this current New England Patriots roster. I think it'll actually lean more towards what we've seen of Cam Newton since 2016. Those 230 yards a game, 60% completion percentage, 82.6 passer rating, 65 touchdowns to 44 interceptions. He'll have about a 1.5 touchdown to interception ratio, in my opinion. The number one wide receiver for the New England Patriots is Julian Edelman. No shade to Julian Edelman. He's fantastic. One of the best slot receivers of all time. Probably a Hall of Famer. Obviously a Super Bowl MVP. But the question is Julian Edelman a number one receiver on a Super Bowl team? I don't know that. Yes, I understand that maybe in the year of the LA Rams Super Bowl, that maybe Julian Edelman was the number one wide receiver on that team. I would argue more Rob Gronkowski. And there is no Rob Gronkowski on this team. Julian Edelman is the number one receiver. And he was the number one receiver for the New England Patriots the second half of last season. And we know how that worked out with Tom Brady as their quarterback. I do not believe Cam Newton is better than Tom Brady right now. I really don't. And the Patriots last year ended the year 4-5 heading into the playoffs and then lost to the Tennessee Titans, obviously. I do not believe that Cam Newton makes the Patriots a better team than they were last year. Last year, the New England Patriots won 12 games, and a lot of people are saying that Cam Newton leading the Patriots would take them to the Super Bowl, can beat the Chiefs, can beat the Ravens. I don't think so. I think they're more on the level of a Browns, as a Steelers, as a Titans. I still don't think they're in the top tier of the AFC, while they might have been in that tier last season. Cam Newton is a fantastic player, and I mentioned on my last show, I really do believe they're going to change the offense. Josh McDaniels has a history with mobile quarterbacks, has a history with Tim Tebow. They are going to take some things they've used over the past 20 years, and they're going to implement it with some things that they can succeed with Cam Newton. For example, I do believe they're going to take the 20-year aspect of getting the ball out quickly and keeping the quarterback off the ground. That will maintain part of this offense. But I do believe they're going to run the ball with Cam Newton a lot. I do believe there's going to be a lot of quarterback powers if Cam Newton is healthy, which is another big question here. But again, Cam Newton's traditional style has been throw the ball downfield, make big plays, home run hitter, not the most consistent player, but he makes those big plays. There's no deep threat here on the New England Patriots roster. You could argue that N'Keal Harry could develop into one. I don't think he's going to make a massive jump of year one to year two. He has health concerns as well. Bird is a fast guy. He was the fourth or fifth receiver on Arizona, was obviously not brought back by them, doesn't have huge stats. I understand that New England has a history of developing receivers into something that maybe they weren't originally, but this one might be a stretch. They did not draft a wide receiver like I thought they would. They went with Kyle Duggar, the safety, in the second round. I would have gone with a wide receiver to help out whatever quarterback there was going to be. But again, Cam Newton adding to this New England Patriots offense isn't going to make this offense better than it was last year. It will in certain areas. I think it'll be more exciting. It'll be less bland. There might be some more big plays, but I don't think that Cam Newton-led Patriots can recreate the 12-4 record they had last year, or the 8-0 start they had last year without a big name wide receiver. I like Mohamed Sanu. I think he's great, but just like Julian Edelman, he's more of a slot guy. He's more of a shallow route runner. He's not a deep threat. And I know him and Cam have a connection, and I'm sure Cam will be more efficient this year than he was last year, and I'll talk about some predicted stats I have for him at the end of this segment. But again, I don't think that what Cam wants to do, maybe, if Cam had his pick of anything, would be throw the ball downfield, get fast guys like Tyreek Hill, guys like John Brown, players like that to push the ball downfield. That's not what they have in New England. They have two unproven tight ends they drafted. Sony Michel needs to have a rebound year. I like James White in this system. Cam loves to throw to running backs. He's been throwing to Christian McCaffrey the past couple seasons. I think they'll have a good connection there. And again, I do believe to a certain extent the Cam Newton New England Patriot fit will work. It will work. I actually believe that they will most likely win the division. Them are the Buffalo Bills. But to say that they're going to go 12-4, 13-3, be right up there with the Chiefs and Ravens is just nonsense to me. I think they're more of an 8-8, 9-7, 10-6 max type team. I think the most amount of games that the New England Patriots will win is 10-6. But again, when you look at their schedule, how hard it is, how they have to play Baltimore, how they have to play Kansas City, how their division has gotten harder. Miami's gotten way better. Buffalo's gotten better. I don't trust the New York Jets though. But they have the hardest schedule in the entire National Football League. And if Tom Brady went 12-4 with an easier schedule last year, the team only got worse. They lost guys like Kyle Van Noy, other players, Ted Karras, the center. They also lost Rob Gronkowski, obviously, Tom Brady. You take that team that has not gotten better in a single area of the football field. They have not gotten better in a single area. And you put that to the hardest schedule in the league with a quarterback who is unproven, who has injury concerns. I think I'm being generous and I think I'm being realistic saying that this team might go 9-7 and 9-7 might win the division in the AFC East. If the Bills take a step back, maybe it's a 9-7 tie for the division and it's a tiebreaker. I think that's entirely realistic, which brings me back to what is Cam Newton actually going to do for the Patriots statistically? No, he's not going to recreate that 2015 season. I really do believe that it's going to be, I think Vegas has an over-under of him throwing 22 touchdowns, which would put him at what Ryan Tannehill threw last year. And then, yes, again, this is a reclamation project similar to Ryan Tannehill was last year. So if I had to predict what Cam Newton's going to throw, I really do believe it's going to be about 240 yards a game, a 1.5 to 1 touchdown to interception ratio, and the team will go 9-7. The only thing that I think will go up than what he's been doing since 2016, which is again 23-23, 65 touchdowns, 44 interceptions, 230 yards a game, 60% completion percentage, 82.6 passer rating. What do I think is going to happen with Cam this year? I think they're going to go 9-7. I think he's going to have a 1.5 to 1 in touchdown to interception ratio like he's had since 2016. I think the pass yards a game will go up from about 230 to maybe 240, 245 because of the efficiency. The biggest jump that Cam's going to have is his completion percentage and his passer rating, because I think we're going to see an efficient Cam Newton. I think that completion percentage will get it to 63, 64. That passer rating will get into maybe the high 80s at max. And I think Cam Newton's going to run the ball. I think Cam Newton's going to rush for about 7 touchdowns. A lot of quarterback powers, a lot of read options, a lot of keeping the defense off their toes. And I think Cam Newton will have a great year. I think he'll throw for, 25, 26 touchdowns, and then whatever the number is, maybe 16, 15, between 15 and 17 interceptions, which will be a great season for Cam Newton. And it'll be a successful reclamation project. I think the Patriots make the playoffs at 9-7, winning the division, wild card, whoever it may be. But if you think he's going to have this season that he's going to return to 2015 form, it's physically impossible. It's impossible to replicate those numbers for anybody to do that. That's going to be his career year, and that's fine. He's not going to win the MVP. He might win comeback player of the year, but he's not going to lead them to the Super Bowl. They're not good enough to beat the Chiefs. They're not good enough to beat the Ravens offensively. And I saw another thing that a Cam Newton-led Patriot team would do better than a Tom Brady-led Buccaneers team. No way. What's really going to happen, in my opinion, is Tom Brady is going to go off. I think he's going to have a fantastic season. I think he's going to have a big year. Tom Brady last year threw for 24 touchdowns, 8 interceptions. And now I would expect Cam Newton, like I just mentioned, maybe threw 26 touchdowns and between 13 and 17 interceptions. Tom Brady for the Buccaneers this year, with maybe the greatest offense he's ever played with, is going to throw 33 to 35 touchdowns this year. I can guarantee it. And his interceptions are going to stay around 8. So he will have a better year than Cam Newton, and absolutely Tampa Bay is going to have a better year than New England Patriots. The offense is just too much. They have an easier schedule while they have a hard division to play with against, New Orleans twice a year, and I don't think Carolina's as bad as people think, and I do believe that Atlanta still has some juice left in them offensively. There is absolutely no chance that New England has a better year than Tampa Bay, or that Cam Newton has a better statistical season than Tom Brady. But that shouldn't be the expectation for Cam. The expectation for Cam should be just get the Patriots to the playoffs. Just get them to the playoffs. You don't have to win the Super Bowl. You don't have to really win a playoff game. Just prove that you're healthy, prove that you're more efficient, prove that you still have a lot of football left, and take the Patriots to the playoffs. That is enough for Cam Newton to get another contract with either New England or with another team in the offseason, and that's what I think Cam Newton should really have. Now, to finish this topic, a lot of people are saying who's under more pressure? Cam Newton with the Patriots or Tom Brady with the Buccaneers? I would like to argue that it's probably Cam Newton. I understand that Tom Brady needs to win a Super Bowl this year, but Tom Brady wants to win a Super Bowl, and that's the expectation for him. Well, I just mentioned Cam Newton's expectation for me is just make the playoffs. Tom Brady's legacy is already set. No matter what happens in these 2+ years at Tampa Bay, Tom Brady's the greatest football player of all time, greatest quarterback of all time, greatest winner of all time, potentially greatest team sport athlete of all time. So that legacy is cemented. He's made enough money. Everything is good for Tom Brady. For Cam Newton, if he has a bad year this year, there's a great chance that Cam Newton is out of this league and he does not find another job in the NFL. And it would be a huge fall from going from MVP in 2015 to out of the league by 2021. So I do believe more personal pressure will be on Cam Newton. I understand they might be feeling the same pressure, but I think there's more at stake for Cam Newton this season than Tom Brady, especially legacy-wise as well, because Cam Newton has a very big opportunity where if he was to return to a great form and maybe prove me wrong and exceed expectations and, return to some semblance of that 2015 MVP form and takes the Patriots to a deep playoff run, then he could have a home in New England for a long time and play with Bill Belichick for 5+ years. But that pressure is on Cam Newton, and I know he's not afraid of it. Also, the pressure of succeeding Tom Brady, high expectations of New England Patriot fans, all those things culminated. I believe Cam Newton's under more pressure. Again, I don't think he's going to have as good of a year as Tom Brady, but again, I do believe this will work at some standpoint. Just don't think it's a Super Bowl. Think it's more 8-8, 9-7. We are going to take a quick break. On the other side of the break, Baker Mayfield might be in trouble, man. There are some reports about Baker Mayfield potentially, and in my opinion, I'm going to be giving you a conspiracy theory why this might be Baker Mayfield's last year as the quarterback of the Cleveland Browns. We'll get into it right after this short break.
Are you looking for the very best NFL and college football podcast? Then check out the GSMC Football Podcast. Get the latest football news both on and off the field. From the NFL Draft to trades to the rumor mill to the NFL Combines. They got you covered. That's GSMCpodcast.com/football-podcast. Get updates on college rivalries, game day insights, and much, much more. It's football talk the way you want it. This show eats, sleeps, and breathes football. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
All right, and we are back here at the GSMC Sports Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I'm Alex Masford. Thank you so much for tuning into today's episode and continuing to listen to the show. I just got finished talking about Cam Newton and the Patriots. I gave some more thoughts on how I think they would do. And this news has sort of something to relate to with Cam Newton, and maybe even a lot to relate to with Cam Newton. So there was a report the day Cam Newton signed with the New England Patriots that went really under the radar that I want to talk about. And that's the fact that there was one other team that was interested in Cam Newton, and that wasn't the LA Chargers like I thought should be interested. Wasn't a team like Pittsburgh, wasn't a team, like maybe Tennessee, teams that, could maybe use an upgrade at quarterback or even some competition like the Bears, teams like that. It was the Cleveland Browns. Yes, the Cleveland Browns actually made a call to Cam Newton and tried to work something out. It obviously fell through. Nothing was even apparently that close according to Adam Schefter. But the Cleveland Browns called Cam, called his agent, checked in on the health, everything of that nature. Now, what's really interesting to me is that Cleveland already has two quarterbacks. This call happened after they signed Case Keenum as a backup, so they would have had Baker Mayfield, Cam Newton, and Case Keenum on the roster. Now, I've mentioned before on this show in a segment a couple episodes ago about which quarterbacks are having a make or break year this year, and I mentioned, well, Baker Mayfield, this is a make or break year because of how poorly last year went, and with the new regime, you could certainly make the argument that if Baker Mayfield had another poor season this year, that the Browns could consider moving off of him. I'm changing that. I am predicting right here, this is a kind of a conspiracy theory, that if Baker Mayfield has a poor year, one that replicates last season, the Browns not will only consider to move off of him, they will move off of him. Now, I don't think Baker Mayfield is going to have a poor year. I do believe that he will bounce back, like I mentioned during that segment. I do think Baker Mayfield will have a good year. I do think the Cleveland Browns will make the playoffs. But if they don't, if they miss the playoffs and the quarterback play is poor, I'm not going to be surprised at all now, and I'm actually predicting that Baker Mayfield will no longer be the quarterback of the Cleveland Browns. So let's get into it. Last year, Baker Mayfield, and the entire Browns team underperformed, specifically Baker Mayfield, who last year threw for only 3,827 yards, which is barely more than his rookie season where he didn't even start all the games. 22 touchdowns that year, which is less than he had his rookie season. Way more interceptions, 21 interceptions that season. Quarterback rating of 78.8, completion percentage of 59.4. Every single statistical category except yards, which were only a little bit higher, went down from his rookie year, and that's not something we see from young quarterbacks. Usually the biggest jump in an NFL quarterback's career, especially in this modern day golden age of quarterbacking, is that year 1 to year 2 jump. We've seen it with Patrick Mahomes. We saw it with Lamar Jackson last year. Russell Wilson as well had a pretty big jump, even though he's really been consistently great. Aaron Rodgers, after he, kind of took over after those years of learning. Usually in your second year of your NFL career, you make a big jump in comparison to what you were your first year of your NFL career, which is why some people advocate for, sitting a guy an entire year, something like that. Now, Baker Mayfield did the opposite. He went down in almost every statistical category, and for a quarterback whose main attribute, apparently, so-called out of college, was the fact that he was accurate. He was supposed to be this extremely accurate quarterback, the next Drew Brees, got a lot of Drew Brees comparisons, and he was extremely inaccurate last year. In fact, he was bottom 5 according to PFF in accuracy. 59% completion percentage down from 63.8. All of these things are signaling regression. And you could definitely argue, especially with how good Lincoln Riley is as a head coach at Oklahoma, that maybe Baker Mayfield, the further and further away he gets from Lincoln Riley, further and further away he gets from the quarterback whisperer at at Oklahoma, that Baker Mayfield is really showing his true colors of not a number 1 pick, just a serviceable guy, a below-tier starter. And that's not something Cleveland can have anymore. Kevin Stefanski's there. They have a new GM as well. John Dorsey's out. Freddie Kitchens is out. And let me tell you this. Who are the biggest fans of Baker Mayfield in the entire world? Browns fans, number 1. Number 2 is ex-general manager John Dorsey. Number 3 is Freddie Kitchens, who was his best friend from a coaching perspective on the team. That's the only reason why they gave him the job, is because how close he was with Baker Mayfield, how well him and Baker got along. And that didn't work out so well. And it also didn't work out well for John Dorsey. The Browns are super talented. They're so stacked. Again, I've called them the Noah's Ark of football teams. Jarvis Landry, Odell Beckham Jr., 2 good receivers, 2 good tight ends, Austin Hooper, David Njoku, 2 good tackles, Jack Conklin, one of the best right tackles in the game, Tristan Wirfs, who out of Alabama, who might be the best left tackle out of the draft this year, 2 phenomenal backs, Kareem Hunt, who is a Pro Bowl level back, and Nick Chubb, who is one of the top 5 backs in the league. Fantastic defense, Myles Garrett, Olivier Vernon. 2 good corners, Greedy Williams, Denzel Ward, and a good linebacking core and a decent safety core. A good head coach, in my opinion, with Kevin Stefanski, and a little bit more stability at the GM position, because this appears, the new GM in Cleveland appears to be the guy that the owner has always wanted, not necessarily John Dorsey. Now, John Dorsey's biggest fans, like I just mentioned, are 2 guys who have been fired. So now, out of the original Baker Mayfield crew, Baker Mayfield supporters, it appears that it's just Baker and the fans. And the fans won't stick around for that long. Fans in sports don't have loyalties. It's in rare circumstances where fans will consistently tolerate poor play and still love a guy. And there are only rare instances that I can think of are something like a legend. Maybe someone who had regressed over the years but had won. Eli Manning comes to mind with the New York Giants. New York Giants fans love Eli Manning. And they took 3-4 years of consistently poor play, and they didn't want Eli benched. And when Eli was benched, they had a whole outfit, they had a whole outrage. Until Daniel Jones came along. Until after 2 games, they got rid of Eli Manning, they benched him, and they brought in Daniel Jones, and there was outrage, how can you bench the legend Eli Manning? And then Daniel Jones starts winning games. And then Daniel Jones actually has some exciting plays. He's making big plays downfield. He's beating the division rivals. He's putting on a show. He's actually entertaining the fans. And then all of a sudden, Eli Manning is completely forgot about of why he should be the starting quarterback, and is now just a wisp in the wind. The same thing will happen with Baker Mayfield if he doesn't have a big year. And I'm telling you right now, I think the Browns seriously considered bringing in Cam Newton. I think Cam Newton wanted a opportunity to play in a bigger city, bigger market, maybe a more proven head coach, and have a guaranteed starting spot. It wouldn't surprise me at all if Kevin Stefanski told Cam Newton, hey, we're going to bring you in just as competition for Baker Mayfield. You're definitely not going to start. It's not even a quarterback competition. But if Cam Newton was signed by the Cleveland Browns, and Baker Mayfield had to actually have a real quarterback competition, a real open-minded quarterback competition. If Kevin Stefanski said, we don't know who the starter is, these 2 guys, or maybe even 3 if you want to throw Case Keenum in there, are going to compete each day in practice to see who will be the starting quarterback at the Cleveland Browns. No biases, no history, completely even level playing field. Cam Newton would win that job 10 out of 10 times. He's a better quarterback than Baker Mayfield. He's more talented than Baker Mayfield. He's got a bigger arm. He's faster, more athletic, more experience, and arguably just as accurate, especially after what we've seen of, Baker Mayfield last season. If that opportunity was really presented to Cam Newton, then that could have been an opportunity where Baker could have already been out. Again, I don't think that was the case. I think the ownership in Cleveland, the fans want to see one more chance at Baker Mayfield. And again, I'm not selling all my Baker Mayfield stock. Again, I have no problem with Baker Mayfield's antics, with his personality. I love it. I love the cockiness. I love the arrogance. I love that of an NFL quarterback. I think we have too many politicians at QB. We have too many Tom Bradys. We need more Aaron Rodgers, more, Patrick Mahomes, more swagger type guys. I love Baker Mayfield. I love the trash he talks. I love it. I love everything about that part. But when he produces a product on the field that isn't living up to the trash talk, living up to the hype, then he's got a problem. And I think Baker Mayfield knows that. I think he knows that his job security in Cleveland isn't secured past this season. This will be his third head coach in 3 years, completely new regime that didn't draft him, maybe didn't love him out of college, maybe don't love what he's putting on the product on the field. And if he has another year like last year, especially a year like last year, 22 touchdowns, 21 interceptions, we all make fun of Jameis Winston and clown Jameis Winston for how bad he was. 30 touchdowns, 30 picks, how can you be that bad? Jameis Winston was second in the entire league in passing yards, with a worse roster than Baker Mayfield. But yet Baker Mayfield doesn't throw for the same yards as Jameis Winston and still has that pretty much 1-to-1 touchdown interception rate. Yet Jameis Winston is terrible, and Baker Mayfield is the future. Something I can't really get behind right now. But again, I do believe Baker Mayfield will bounce back. He absolutely has to. But if you notice this offseason, there's not a lot of trash talk from Baker Mayfield. Not a lot of Instagram, hype comments, hype videos, things like that. It appears that Baker Mayfield's just going down and getting to work, and you could say it's a sign of maturity, it's a sign of growth. I don't think so. I think Baker Mayfield's brand is still hype, trash talk, all that good stuff. I think he just knows now that he isn't the safest job in the world. He isn't as safe as a Tom Brady. He isn't as safe as even a Sam Darnold. This new this new Browns regime might not be as committed to Baker Mayfield as the last one was, and he needs to have a big year. Now, can he do it? Absolutely, and I expect it. I do believe the Browns are going to make the playoffs. They seem like a 10-6, 9-7 team to me. I love Kevin Stefanski, and a great pro comparison to Baker Mayfield that a lot of people made out of college. Besides the Drew Brees comparison, which has completely fallen off, Baker Mayfield will never be Drew Brees, is a stronger arm Case Keenum. I've seen a lot of people do that, seen a lot of people talk about that. Kevin Stefanski was obviously fantastic in Minnesota. They obviously went 13-3 that year with Case Keenum as the quarterback. Minneapolis Miracle, almost went to the Super Bowl, all that good stuff. I don't think he'll replicate that same exact success that he had in Minnesota, but I really do believe that there's a lot of similar components of that team. That team had two good receivers, Adam Thielen, Stephon Diggs, a good tight end, Kyle Rudolph, good running back. I think Dalvin Cook was the running back of that team. Good defense, good offensive line. Winnable division, winnable schedule. Cleveland's schedule is not as bad as it was last year. Last year, Cleveland had a terrible schedule. A lot of Monday Night Football games. A lot of, nationally televised games. A lot of tough opponents. This year, it's a little bit easier. The only thing that's really holding Cleveland back is their division and their quarterback play. I already know that Cleveland has one of the best wide receivers in the NFL. One of the best offensive lines in the league. One of the best defensive fronts in the league. One of the best secondaries in the league. One of the best running back groups in the league. I don't know if they have one of the best quarterbacks in the league, though. And I don't know if they have the easiest division. You already know the Ravens are going to bring it. The Ravens are going to be probably the best team in the league. If Big Ben is even 80% of what Big Ben has been the last 10 years, again, I don't think that the Steelers are going to go 8-8 again. I think I have them going at least 9-7. And 9 wins is hard in the National Football League. It's really tough. And when a year with coronavirus where there's shortened OTAs and there's no preseason this year, there's already been cut down to at least 2 games, and the preseason will most likely just not exist at all this season, and you have a tough schedule, and you're bringing in a new crew, and you're trying to have a new offensive system, and you're trying to balance everything, get on the same page with Odell Beckham and Jarvis Landry and, David Njoku, new tight end Austin Hooper, and you're trying to get the offensive line to blend. Cleveland can't waste no time. Cleveland can't afford to start off slow. You can't start Cleveland 1-4 again this year. You can't start 1-3 and expect to remain in the division when the Pittsburgh Steelers are at least going to be a 500 football team. And you already know that the Baltimore Ravens are going to go 13-3, 14-12, 12-4 in that range. And it's on Baker Mayfield this year. He's had every single opportunity. I rash on Dak Prescott a lot saying, Dak Prescott doesn't elevate his team. He's only as good as his weapons. If you switch Dak Prescott and Baker Mayfield, if Dak Prescott's on the Cleveland Brown, I can guarantee you Dak Prescott isn't throwing 22 touchdowns and 21 interceptions. 21 interceptions. You can't turn the ball over 21 times with that level of talent around. You can't do that with 2 good receivers, 2 good backs, 2 good tight ends, 2 good tackles, a great defense, and a not so hard, and winnable games against Cincinnati and Pittsburgh without Big Ben. You just simply can't do that. And if Baker Mayfield replicates those things, I mentioned before how I think they could consider moving on from him, I can guarantee you they'll move on from him. They'll look for somebody like a Cam Newton. If Kevin Stefanski also might have signaled throughout this entire Cam Newton sequence of that call that maybe Kevin Stefanski wants to run with a mobile quarterback. Maybe he wants to run with a big, strong, athletic guy, the completely opposite of Baker Mayfield, who's less athletic, smaller, not as strong-armed. There's a quarterback in the draft, folks, that's a lot like Cam Newton. His name is Trey Lance. Threw for 28 touchdowns, no interceptions. Baker Mayfield hasn't done that. Also ran for over 1,000 yards. The complete opposite of Baker Mayfield, essentially, is Trey Lance. Maybe Kevin Stefanski wants to go in that direction. And the Cam Newton conversation was to talk about that and maybe signaling to Baker Mayfield, it's time to get to work. It's time to have a big year. You need to improve. Just a thought, just a little theory for you guys there about Baker Mayfield and the Browns after that news about how Cam Newton had a call from Cleveland and he could have gone there potentially. We're going to take another quick break. On the other side of the break, I'm going to be talking about some news that came out. It is the 10th year anniversary of the decision, the year LeBron James decided to take his talent to South Beach, and I'll talk a little bit about that and also how the New York Knicks almost got LeBron James, and I'll be talking about how to save the New York Knicks as well. That's all next segment. We have a packed segment after this quick break, so make sure you stick around. Also stay around to the end of the episode where I'll be giving you my top 10 NFL trios offensively in the league. And we're going to take one quick short break, so make sure you stick around.
Check out the show that's built on the MMA. From the UFC to extreme cage fighting, they got the fights covered. Check out the GSMC MMA podcast. Get the latest news on past or upcoming fights. Join us as we talk to and about some of the biggest names in the MMA, past, present, and future. When it's the fight game, there's just one show to check out. GSMCpodcast.com/MMA-podcast. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
All right, and we are back here at the GSMC Sports Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I'm Alex Masford. Thank you so much for listening so far through today's episode. We really appreciate it. I'm going to be talking about now, 10 years ago, almost today, I believe, it's coming up this week, is the anniversary of the decision, which, if you don't know, is when LeBron James famously said on the ESPN airways in front of everybody at a Boys and Girls Club, I am taking my talents to South Beach. And I want to just kind of reminisce on the impact of that decision at first, and I'll be talking about the New York Knicks in a minute. But 10 years ago, LeBron James decided to join forces with the Miami Heat, Pat Riley, Eric Spoelstra, Chris Bosh, Dwayne Wade, everything like that. After months and months of speculation, it finally came out. And in my opinion, one of the things that will cement LeBron's legacy forever, besides obviously that decision it will, is how LeBron James really empowered superstars in the NBA to move, to be okay with demanding trades. It kind of escalated from leaving in free agency to then it became just demanding trades, and now we're seeing that people are demanding trades younger and younger. It's not even veterans demanding trades anymore, Anthony Davis at only 24, 25 demanded a trade to go to Los Angeles Lakers. Trae Young recently just signed with Clutch Sports, and there's some executives I saw a report that believe that Trae Young could request a trade in Atlanta if things don't get turned around quickly. And that's how it works in the NBA now. You got to make your superstars happy, otherwise they're going to want to leave. Giannis Antetokounmpo could leave in free agency. I've talked about that before. And that all started in that day in 2010 when LeBron James empowered the players. When LeBron James is the one who stuck out his neck, took all the heat for leaving Cleveland, and made it out on the other side and showed people like Kevin Durant, like some other players, that it is okay to leave in free agency. It is okay to leave the team that drafted you, even if you're good, even if you made a finals like the Cavaliers did in that year and lost to the Spurs, even if you consistently made deep playoff runs like LeBron did with the Cavaliers as well. It is okay to leave for a better opportunity, a better market, grow your own personal brand. And that's something that LeBron James started. That was not a thing before 2010. Players weren't moving like that. Maybe Shaquille O'Neal was one of them, but Shaquille O'Neal trade wasn't necessarily of LeBron or Shaq wanting to necessarily leave the Los Angeles Lakers or leave the Orlando Magic, things like that. It was more just the opportunity came up. So Shaquille O'Neal kind of did that. But the first time someone really chose to leave a team that was doing good, hometown, I mean, the magnitude of that decision, it was all LeBron James. And in my opinion, if LeBron doesn't do that, if LeBron doesn't take his talents to South Beach, I don't think Kevin Durant goes to the Warriors. I don't think these trades, players like Anthony Davis requesting trades so young, so early into their careers are doing that. And really without LeBron doing that, there's something in the NBA called the Supermax, which sort of tries to combat the players like Giannis leaving Milwaukee, potentially Anthony Davis leaving New Orleans. They want the small markets to have their good players, so they created something called the Supermax, which essentially rewards players for staying with the team that drafted them, something that Giannis will be eligible for after the season. It's like a $250 million contract extension. If you remember, Russell Westbrook signed it with Oklahoma City before he was traded to the Houston Rockets because he wanted a better opportunity. Again, all these moves, in my opinion, don't happen unless LeBron James does what he does. He made superstars mobile. He empowered the players. The league now more than ever is a player-dominated league, and that is because of LeBron James, and I think we need to start commending him for that, really, because it brings so much entertainment to this game. And while some people argue, it hurts the smaller markets, the NBA now is a year-round thing. It's so year-round. Yes, we watch the games, and maybe some sports like baseball where the off-season's a little bit slower, or we're kind of going through it right now in the NFL where, it's after the draft, after free agency, and we're waiting to get to training camp, and there's kind of a dead zone going on. Obviously, that doesn't happen in basketball anymore. Because after the finals, it's the draft. And the NBA is, in college basketball, is pumping out constant new superstars. These kids are so good young. Luka Doncic is averaging 30 points as a 21-year-old. So is Trae Young. Devin Booker at under 25 is so good. I did a whole segment a few episodes ago, top 10 players under 25, and there's so many than just those top 10. They're competing better when they're younger. Rookies are making a huge impact. Zion Williamson just got announced he's on the cover of the 2K21 video game at just 19 years old. He's one of the biggest faces in the entire NBA. And college basketball keeps pumping these guys out just constantly. 19-year-olds who are good. 19-year-olds who are faces of the franchise. 18-year-old guys who can score, 25 points a game consistently. The game's getting younger. It's getting faster. And some of the veterans are still here. LeBron's still great. Kawhi's getting here. All these guys. And it's such a star-driven and more empowerment league more than ever because of LeBron James, because of the impact he's made on the game. And I think we need to start respecting that more. And again, this is a year-round thing. After the draft is free agency. How long do we speculate on these free agents? For months and months, and then it's finally midnight, and guys are going here. Jimmy Butler gets to the Miami Heat through a sign and trade. Brooklyn goes with KD and Kyrie. The Nets strike out. All these moves don't happen until LeBron James is the one who started all this. LeBron James is the one who did this, and that's almost the biggest way he's changed the game. Really, when you think about it, because everything LeBron James has done from a game style standpoint, we've seen before. We watched Magic Johnson be a 6'10" point guard, 6'8", 6'9", 6'10" point guard. We see the athleticism before with Michael Jordan, so we've seen everything that LeBron's doing, the dunking, the energetic, the defense, the shooting, the point guard play, we've all seen before through different legends, maybe not to LeBron James's level, maybe not to 8 or 9 or 10 straight finals level or, things like that. I'm not saying they're as good as LeBron James, but we've seen the style of play before, versus Magic Johnson was the first of his time, and Michael Jordan was the first of his time, first time a ball-dominant guard was really dominating like that. Things like that. LeBron, we've all seen that before, but we've never seen a player transcend the game, how empowered the players are, the mobility of the stars. We've never seen something like that before, and I think we need to start, respecting LeBron James for that and adding that to part of his legacy. And sticking with the decision, there was something that came out from The Ringer on the Bill Simmons podcast about the New York Knicks. Now, the New York Knicks haven't been in the news for a while. They've been completely irrelevant for maybe, the past 25, 30 years. They had a short little stint there with Carmelo Anthony and Linsanity, obviously, but the Knicks have just kind of been a dumpster fire for the longest time that I can remember, and it almost changed in 2010. So in 2010, Bill Simmons said this about the LeBron James situation in the New York Knicks when LeBron ultimately decided to go to Miami. This is what Bill Simmons said, and I quote, "From everyone that I've talked to in the know since then, it's clear that the Knicks were the first choice for LeBron. And I'm sorry, Knicks fans, earmuffs, but it was basically the Knicks to lose, and they just couldn't stay out of their own way, and the stories are legendary. They had a meeting, Donnie Walsh was in a wheelchair, and Dolan was Dolan as in James Dolan, the owner, and it was just completely, they didn't have anything prepared. And it could not have gone worse by all accounts. It was a complete disaster." That's Bill Simmons on his own podcast, the Bill Simmons podcast, talking about how LeBron James wanted to sign with the New York Knicks, but they couldn't get out of their own way in the meeting. The Sopranos were also in the meeting, things like that. And it just shows, yet again, not to just spend, the next 5 minutes or so laughing at the New York Knicks, but the Knicks are gonna nick. It's just how it works. They had an opportunity to get LeBron James. LeBron James wanted to be a New York Knick, and they couldn't stay out of their own way. Somehow the sales pitch of the meeting for the New York Knicks was so bad that it talked LeBron out of joining the New York Knicks, which is something that has to be an NBA and maybe even a basketball first. Obviously ended up going with the Miami Heat and things like that. But for the next few minutes or so, I want to offer my opinion to Knicks fans on how I believe the New York Knicks could really actually be saved. Now, the obvious answer here is somehow get James Dolan to sell the team, and that's tough because I really, really, really doubt that that's ever going to happen. James Dolan seems to be committed to being the New York Knicks owner. I know a lot of Knicks fans, the famous ones like Stephen A. Smith, Spike Lee, want Dolan to sell the team. If I were a Knicks fan, I want Dolan to sell the team as well, as he seems to be the biggest, positive influence on the organization and the biggest roadblock, I should say, to getting star players, things like that. Obviously, if you remember at the beginning of last year, a lot of Knicks fans believed that they were going to get Zion Williamson in the draft lottery, sign KD, and sign Kyrie Irving, and they were actually the favorites to do all three of those. Instead, the Pelicans win the draft lottery, they get Zion. New York gets a good player, and RJ Barrett, who I think is a little bit underperforming, but again, super young, could be a great player, could be a superstar, RJ Barrett, instead of Zion Williamson. KD and Kyrie decide to go to the Brooklyn Nets, the second tier, the lower brand, the second team in New York. They choose that over to go to New York Knicks. So right now it appears that the Knicks are pretty unsavable, and the only real way, to build up the Knicks would be to, fire Dolan and get rid of James Dolan, which is impossible. So I'm going to leave that out of here. I'm going to say this is how I would save the New York Knicks if I was running the New York Knicks and James Dolan was the owner. Let's say I was the president of basketball operations, something like that. This is what I would do. I would build through the draft, right? You build through the draft like they've kind of been doing. Guys like Mitchell Robinson, RJ Barrett, get some young guys, get some shooters, get some people that are going to help you compete for a playoff spot, and hopefully in the next 2 years, really start to compete for that 8th seed in the East. Even just making the 8th seed in the East, even if you're below 500, just get in the playoffs, get your name in the ring, watch them on a playoff series, get the Knicks on New York, get the New York Knicks on television again, things like that. Now, second, who would I hire as the New York Knicks head coach? There are two options. Number one is Mark Jackson, who a lot of New York Knicks fans want to be the coach. He's currently a broadcaster. He was the Golden State Warriors coach right before the Warriors kind of blew up. He's the one who had huge development when it came to Steph Curry, Klay Thompson, Draymond Green. So Mark Jackson for me would be kind of maybe a 1A or a 1B to another name I'm about to mention for the New York Knicks head coaching job. And I really do believe you have to select a head coach that New York Knicks fans are going to get behind. Even if you gotta, at some point, James Dolan, you have to appeal to the fans. You have to do what they want so they don't come for your neck. So I could really see Mark Jackson being one of the favorites. I don't know if he'll actually get hired. There haven't been a lot of reports or speculation of who the New York Knicks will hire, but Mark Jackson would be on the top of that list, right next to the next person I'm going to talk about, and that's Jason Kidd. Now, Jason Kidd with the New York Knicks as the head coach, I think would be great. I think Jason Kidd gets a bad rap. He's been fired twice by both Brooklyn and Milwaukee. And yes, in theory, those teams have gotten better since he left. I really do believe that Jason Kidd is a good head coach. He's currently the lead assistant for the Los Angeles Lakers, and I think he's huge when it comes to player development. I really do believe he's one of the best player development coaches in the NBA. And one of the players that he had a huge, massive role, and you can ask this person yourselves, of developing that player, and that's Giannis Antetokounmpo of Milwaukee. If you remember when Jason Kidd got fired from the Milwaukee Bucks, Giannis was in shambles. He was total upset because of how much Jason Kidd meant to him in his development into becoming one of the best players, if not the best player in the NBA. And he's a free agent in 2021. If you have Jason Kidd as the head coach after this year, and you spend an entire season developing guys like RJ Barrett, Mitchell Robinson, whoever you draft in the first round this year, guys like that, and you start to compete, and maybe you're in that 8th seed of the Eastern Conference, you make the playoffs, Giannis acknowledges that you're on the rise, things like that, then you go into 2021 with a sales pitch. One of Giannis's favorite people in the league, Jason Kidd, a young core surrounded around RJ Barrett, Mitchell Robinson, guys like that, not Julius Randle, he's on the team, but he's not, part of the young core necessarily. Kevin Knox, if he could develop whoever you draft in the first round, you have that young core. Jason Kidd, who's developed them, potentially made the playoffs once before you get into the sales meeting with Giannis, and also is one of Giannis's favorite people in the league. Then you go to the New York, and then as the New York Knicks collective like that, you go to the Giannis Antetokounmpo in the sales meeting, and you tell them, will you save the New York Knicks? Will you be the greatest player in Knicks history? Will you be the one that delivers a championship to New York City, the Mecca of basketball, Madison Square Garden? That is how I would save the New York Knicks. That's what I think they would do. Are the Knicks going to do that? Most likely not. They're probably going to hire somebody that nobody agrees with and have no shot at Giannis Antetokounmpo and probably not develop their guys very well, and the Knicks are just going to continue to nick. But if they could get a Jason Kidd, they could make a playoffs next year. They could develop some guys. They hit a home run in the draft this year. It wouldn't surprise me at all if Giannis seriously considered it, man. Seriously. All right, we're going to take one last break. On the other side of the break, I'm going to be giving you my top 10 NFL trios on the offensive side of the ball. A common term used in the NFL nowadays is who is your trio on the offensive side of the ball, your quarterback usually, and your next 2 best weapons. I'll be getting the top 10 NFL trios on offense right after this break, so make sure you stick around for that.
Are you looking for help for your fantasy football team? Check out the GSMC Fantasy Football Podcast. Get today's best advice on who to start, who to sit, even who you should draft. From sleeper picks to red hot lineups, they got it all covered for you. That's GSMCpodcast.com/fantasy-football-podcast. We'll cover traditional leagues, dynasty, PPR, even IDP leagues. When you need fantasy help, there's just one show to hit up. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
All right, and we are back here at the GSMC Sports Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network for the last segment of today's show. Thank you so much for listening so far and sticking with me all the way through the end of today's episode. So, the NFL, I believe it was either Pro Football Focus's Twitter account, or I think it actually might have been the actual NFL Twitter account, tweeted out something like, what is the best trio in the NFL offensively? And there was a lot of debate in the comments and stuff, so I just wanted to give you guys my top 10 NFL trios on the offensive side of the ball. Now, just some quick clarification. Usually when people talk about trios, they usually talk about your quarterback, your wide receiver, your running back. For my list, I adjusted the rules. It's for me, instead of it's just, quarterback, wide receiver, running back, it's for me, or even tight end sometimes. For me, it's quarterback and your best 2 weapons after that for the best offensive trios in the NFL. So let's just get right into it. Coming in at number 10, I have the Cleveland Browns with Baker. I just finished talking about Baker Mayfield 2 segments ago. Again, even though it is a make or break year for Baker Mayfield, I do think he'll step up to the challenge because I really do believe his job depends on it. So for Baker Mayfield and the Browns, their offensive trio I have here is Baker Mayfield, Odell Beckham Jr., and Nick Chubb. Now, they also have people like Austin Hooper, Jarvis Landry, Kareem Hunt, who are also all fantastic NFL players. I just wanted to give those top 3. At number 10, I have the Cleveland Browns. I really do believe Baker Mayfield's going to step up. I think there's just too much talent for Baker Mayfield not to have a bounce-back season. Not to mention, I do believe they got a major, major upgrade in the coaching staff when it comes to Kevin Stefanski. So at number 10, I have the Cleveland Browns. At number 9, I have the Minnesota Vikings, Kevin Stefanski's old team. Their top three is Kirk Cousins, Adam Thielen, and Dalvin Cook if he re-signs. Now, Dalvin Cook, in my opinion, is maybe a top 3 or 4 running back in the entire league. They have some contract things they need to work out. I expect that they will get it done. Dalvin Cook, in my opinion, is Minnesota's best player. Adam Thielen is one of the better wide receivers in the league, one of the maybe even top 10. And I like Kirk Cousins a lot. He fits in that category that I talk about all the time on the show, the Dak Prescotts, Jimmy Garoppolos. But the way Kirk Cousins throws the football he throws the ball so beautifully. He might throw the most catchable ball in the entire league. And also, Kirk Cousins had a big year last year. He beat the New Orleans Saints in the playoffs, kind of, trying to get at that narrative that he is in clutch. They obviously offered him, another extension. I think it was around the same terms. It's a 3-year deal. I like Kirk Cousins a lot. He gets a lot of heat. All he's done is overperform expectations of him. I think he was a 4th-round pick. He wasn't even supposed to be the starting quarterback of the Redskins, and then eventually to the Minnesota Vikings. All he does is exceed expectations, and I feel like guys who are those mid-round picks, like in those 4th-round picks, those 2nd-round picks, 3rd-round picks, who weren't the highest quarterback overall, for whatever reason, we hold them to a higher standard. That includes Dak Prescott, who I hold to a high standard. Then guys who went in the 1st round who aren't panning out well. Why do we hold Kirk Cousins to a higher standard than we do Baker Mayfield when Baker Mayfield was drafted number 1 overall? Kirk Cousins was a 4th-round pick, not even supposed to be here, or even a Dak Prescott, things like that. But anyway, back to the Vikings. I think they're going to have a pretty good year. Wouldn't surprise me if they take a step back, though. With the loss of Kevin Stefanski, they could have a new offensive system, not to mention the loss of Stephon Diggs as well, and who knows what will happen with the Dalvin Cook situation. But if everything goes right for the Vikings, they have a top 10 offensive trio: Cousins, Thielen, Cook. At number 8, I have a team that is recently going to join this list, and that is the Arizona Cardinals. I love Kyler Murray, one of the best young quarterbacks in the league, if not, I don't think he's the best, but out of all the quarterbacks who are, recently drafted, I think Kyler Murray is definitely up there. He throws the ball so interesting. Everything with him is a fastball, which is ironic because he's also a pretty big baseball player and was drafted in the 1st round. I think even top 10 in the MLB draft. So it's kind of interesting to see how the way he throws the football almost like a baseball. It's like a missile every single time. He also throws with touch, obviously, but it's so interesting to see him just get so much velocity when he throws the football. It's kind of interesting. Obviously, the number 1 wide receiver is DeAndre Hopkins, who they just traded for a 2nd-round pick. Absolute robbery. DeAndre Hopkins is maybe the best receiver in the league. You could certainly argue it. And then Larry Fitzgerald, I actually have as their 3rd best, offensive weapon. You can make the argument that, Christian Kirk is in there as well, or even Kenyon Drake, which a lot of people would argue. I still like Larry Fitzgerald, one of my favorite players in NFL history, so I have him as their 3rd weapon, but you could certainly make the argument somebody like a Kenyon Drake as well. So number 8, the Cardinals with Kyler, Hopkins, and Larry Fitzgerald. At number 7, I have the Dallas Cowboys, and even though I'm hard on Dak Prescott, I do believe that the Cowboys, and I'm really hard on the Cowboys overall, I do believe they have a top 10 offensive trio: Dak, Amari Cooper, Ezekiel Elliott. I think that this isn't the most maybe clutch offensive trio in the league, but they do win games, especially at home, against teams like the Giants, things like that. Amari Cooper's a great receiver. I think he deserves his contract. He just needs to, perform more against the top corners. Ezekiel Elliott's maybe the top running back in the game. He's awesome. He's always consistent, always running for over 1,000 yards. He's fantastic. And again, Dak Prescott, even though I'm hard on him, is a good quarterback, is a great quarterback. Deserves a contract. I don't think it's $45 million a year. More of that $23 to $27 million range, or even 33 around there. But again, they still have a top 10 offensive trio. I wouldn't surprise me if they make the playoffs. I don't think they'll win the division. I think Philly will, but the Cowboys will be a good team, a winning football team, over 500. So again, number 7, Cowboys, Dak, Amari Cooper, Ezekiel Elliott. At number 6, I have the Green Bay Packers. I've been talking about Aaron Rodgers a lot recently, so obviously Aaron Rodgers, Devontae Adams, and Aaron Jones, who is one of the most underrated running backs in the entire league, maybe the most underrated. He should have been, I don't know, maybe it wasn't he was a Pro Bowler or All-Pro, something where Aaron Jones was top 5 in the league in rushing and top 5 in the league in rushing touchdowns, and they just didn't give him any votes. I don't know why. Maybe it's because he plays for Green Bay, and kind of everything there is overshadowed by Aaron Rodgers. Definitely one of the top offensive trios in the league. The problem with Green Bay's offense is it's really just those 3 guys. There is no second great receiver. There is no great tight end, things like that. Their whole entire offense really revolves around Aaron Rodgers, Devontae Adams, and Aaron Jones. But nonetheless, it is a great offensive trio, top 6. I have them at number 6 here. Green Bay Packers, Aaron Rodgers, Devontae Adams, and Aaron Jones. At number 5, I have the Atlanta Falcons. Again, I don't trust the Falcons. I don't believe they're a great team, and I think they're probably going to finish last in their division. but they always have a good offense. It's really their defense and their coaching that's been letting them down recently. I like Matt Ryan a lot. He's kind of declined ever since that Super Bowl kind of, absolute disaster meltdown. But their top three, Matt Ryan, Julio Jones, Todd Gurley. The only way that the Falcons are really going to improve from the team last year that they had is if Todd Gurley comes back and is the Todd Gurley we all know and love. If Todd Gurley, maybe this injury is all overblown and he's actually healthy and he can take all those carries and take the, offensive workload that he had in LA about 2 years ago when they went to the Super Bowl, Atlanta could have one of the best offenses in the league. And I do believe Matt Ryan is still capable of being in a top 10, NFL quarterback, or not in top 10 necessarily, but just an elite NFL quarterback. And I think Julio Jones is the best receiver in the league. Again, I really like DeAndre Hopkins, Devontae Adams, Cooper, OBJ, some other guys, Mike Evans, Tyreek Hill. But in my opinion, Julio Jones is the best receiver in the league. So they are coming in as a top 5 offensive trio, the Falcons, with Matt Ryan, Julio Jones, and Todd Gurley. At number 4, I have the Baltimore Ravens, led obviously by their quarterback, former MVP, or the recent MVP, Lamar Jackson. Mark Ingram in the backfield is one of the best running backs in the league. They had one of the best rushing attacks in the league with Mark Ingram, Lamar Jackson, now J.K. Dobbins, who they've added. And as the third offensive target I have for the Ravens, I actually have Mark Andrews, the tight end, who is the best young tight end in football, in my opinion. Travis Kelce, I think, is the best tight end overall. But best young tight end, I'd have to give it to Mark Andrews. He's absolutely fantastic. So at number 4, I have the Ravens with Lamar Jackson, Mark Ingram, and Mark Andrews. One of the best offensive trios. One of the more underrated ones as well. I know Lamar Jackson won the MVP, but to think that it's all Lamar Jackson is just wrong. Mark Andrews is one of the best young tight ends, like I just mentioned, and Mark Ingram is one of the best running backs in the league as well. So at number 4, I have the Ravens. At number 3, I have the New Orleans Saints with Drew Brees, Michael Thomas, Alvin Kamara. Again, pretty much here you have top 10 to top 5 in almost every major position. Drew Brees is a top 10 quarterback in the league. Michael Thomas is a top 5 wide receiver. Alvin Kamara is a top 5 running back, especially maybe even the best receiving back in the league. I love everything about the Saints offense. It's always been consistent with Sean Payton. They've always been an offensive team. That's going to continue again this year. While Drew Brees is declining, it's not major. I like Michael Thomas a lot. I love Alvin Kamara. Alvin Kamara is one of the best players and one of the most fun players to watch in the entire National Football League. So at number 3, I have the Saints with Brees, Thomas, and Kamara. And number 2, I have the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in the division, so it's kind of crazy before I get into the Bucs. So the NFC South has 3 teams in the top 10 of NFL trios, Bucs, Saints, and Falcons. And I really do believe that the Panthers are going to have a good offense this year. I don't think it's a top 10 NFL trio offense with like maybe Bridgewater, Moore, and McCaffrey. It'll be good, but I don't think it's top 10 in the league. It's really interesting to see how offensively dominant like the NFC South is. It's really cool to see. But anyway, back to the Bucs. Tom Brady, Mike Evans, and Rob Gronkowski I have as the third, even though you could put Chris Godwin in there as the number 4. I just love everything about the Bucs. I'm high on them. I'm high on Tom Brady. I don't think he's done. I don't think he's regressed that much. I really do believe he's going to have a huge bounce back year. After throwing, I think it was 24 touchdowns, 8 interceptions, I really do believe he's going to throw 34 or 35 with this offense. I've already done a segment and almost an entire episode on, is this the best offense Tom Brady's ever played with in comparison to that? I think it was 2011. 2007 undefeated Patriots team. That team really resembles this team offensively, not defensively at all, or coaching-wise at all, but offensively, there's so many weapons for Tom Brady to use. He's going to throw 33 to 35 touchdowns. Going to look like young Tom Brady again, or really just 40-year-old Tom Brady again. It's going to be really interesting to see. I have them at number 2 as an offensive trio with Tom Brady, Mike Evans, Rob Gronkowski, and Chris Godwin as a number 4 kind of. And number 1, it appears that on all of my lists that the Kansas City Chiefs has somebody at the top, if not number 1. Patrick Mahomes is the best quarterback in the entire National Football League, and I really don't believe it's close. He's obviously the number 1 weapon, and really the number 1 weapon in all of football is Patrick Mahomes. Then we have Tyreek Hill, the fastest receiver in the league, best deep threat receiver in the league, works perfectly with Patrick Mahomes in the Andy Reid system. And I have Travis Kelce at number 3. Even though I really love the Clyde Edwards-Helaire draft pick for them, I think he'll be one of the best running backs in the league, and he'll remind me a lot of almost like a superhuman version of Darren Sproles. Like if Alvin Kamara and Darren Sproles kind of combine into one player, that's what I think Clyde Edwards-Helaire is going to be. It's going to be so much fun to watch the Kansas City Chiefs for the next decade. Their offense, all their weapons, Tyreek Hill, Clyde Edwards-Helaire, Travis Kelce. It's no surprise, I don't think, to anybody that they have the best offensive trio. They have the best offense in the entire league, best quarterback, top 5 receiver, best tight end, soon to be top 5 running back in the league, in my opinion, with Clyde Edwards-Helaire. One of the best offensive coaches, Andy Reid. No surprise here. The Kansas City Chiefs have the best offensive trio. That is going to do it for today's episode of the GSMC Sports Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. Don't forget to subscribe to the podcast. Leave us a 5-star review. Follow us on all social media. All that good stuff. Again, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you all in the next episode.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast, part of the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and Google Play. Just type in GSMC to find all the shows from the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network, from movies to music, from sports to entertainment, and even weird news. You can also follow us on Twitter and on Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's program.